Welcome back, everybody. This is Brandy M. Miller with Creating with Love, where we work to create videos that spread love, hope, and joy to every human heart through creative expression. And if you've been on this journey with me for the last 6 days now, you will know that we are working to create a novel, possibly a series of novels. I'm going to put the playlist in the description below. So if you haven't watched those other videos, you're going to want to watch those, because every video builds on the last one. We are reaching the last stage really of our planning, and we're about to start putting the work in to build this novel from the ground up. So I'm going to share my screen, and I recognize in my last videos I haven't been talking you through the action that I'm taking and the thought process, so I'm going to work to improve that so that you're with me every step of the way. And these are the last three characters, the mentor, the negative, and the positive shapeshifter, that we need to flesh out. So we're going to start with our mentor character. We're going to introduce you to her and insert a page break here so that we get a clean area to work in. I always like to keep things clean when I'm working on planning so that I know exactly what's going on each area. And I use heading 1 so that the thing that I'm working on, well, in this case, I'm using heading 2s for these characters, so they all kind of collaborate together on that side. And this is the mentor that our character Connie turns to whenever she needs help. And since Mary is eternally alive in Christ, she does not have an age. So we need to get these things. We're going to talk about this. Education, divine. She's got the ultimate education. She was educated by Christ himself. So occupation is mother of all humanity. That's a pretty big job, really. She is a married woman. She's married to the Holy Spirit. She was the very first bride of Christ. All right, and her residential status, she lives in heaven. Hair, auburn. Eyes, hazel. Family status, all the children. And I'm going to say her religion is Roman Catholic. And the city is heaven. Now, her deepest desire, women should know Christ. People, we'll rewrite that. Greatest fear, we should lose one of her children. Greatest strength, Christ. Greatest weakness, dependence upon people to enact her, to act on her behalf. Okay, so she can't, without God's permission, she can't directly intervene in humanity's history. Now, there are times she has, and there are many times she has, like the Virgin of Guadalupe. If you do the research, she has actually directly come and appeared to somebody and helped move humanity closer to Christ. But those times are rare. For the most part, she relies on us, just like Christ does, to enact God's will in this world. Which means that she's got to incentivize people like you and me to pick up that rosary, to pray, to grow closer to Christ, to grow warmer in charity, to care more about each other, and to take actions to help one another. So let's see what steps she takes. And it's kind of going to be based on what's going on around her. Who's tapping into her strength. Let's look at what's happening in this story at this point in time. So Mary enters the story. Let's go back and read our synopsis. Okay, so first we get this recommendation that Connie gives to Lucy. I got to get that right. To pray the rosary as a means of guiding her through handling the mean girls at school. So this is the first time we really hear about Mary being a guardian. So that's the first step when she first appears in the story. And it's fairly early on, which is exactly where we would want her to be. Now, the typical action, what will happen normally when somebody begins to pray for help dealing with somebody else, it's not that Mary doesn't work on that person, but the first person she has to work through is the person who's praying to her, because that's the person she has the most direct connection to. So Mary begins to help Lucy gain insights into why the mean girls are so mean. All right, and that's usually how it works, is that in my experience, when I pray for somebody else, what Mary does is not fix them, but help me better understand what's happening in them so that I stop hurting them or stop antagonizing them or stop adding to the situation. In other words, she increases my wisdom and understanding so that I'm better equipped to serve the very people who are offending me most. So let's see what the next thing is. We got to go back to that expanded synopsis. Okay, so during her prayer, Connie begins to pray for the grace to reclaim the world for Christ. All right, so Connie begins to pray for the grace to reclaim the world for Christ, and Mary works to help Connie understand why so many people are rejecting Christ, not by confronting them, but by confronting her about her own behaviors that might be driving people away. So that she can work to fix those and not be part of the contributing problem, but part of the solution. Now let's see. So let's go back. Yeah, so Deacon Gerald advised her to begin the work by first reclaiming her own part for Christ, advice she does not appreciate, which rarely do we appreciate being told, even by God, that the problem is us, that we're the one that needs to work on things, not the people around us. But it's often the truth. You are usually unconsciously doing things that drive people away from Christ, that drive people away from love, that are making them feel unloved and shut out. And so it's your behavior that has to change first. Because if you're not a living example for love in the world, you're an obstacle to Christ, and you're an obstacle to reclaiming the world for Christ, because quite frankly, you're a false witness of what it means to be led by Christ. So people look at you and go, oh, That's what I get when I follow Christ. Ooh, I don't want that. Rather than going, ooh, you have something I want. How can I get it? And you point them to Christ. That's that simple. So let's see. Task commiserates with her. It tells her that she's only one person. There's nothing she can do to change things. Okay, so Angela proves to be a thorn in her side. So let's go back up here and frustrated by Angela's behavior, Bonnie begins to pray, begins to include Angela in her rosary prayers. Begins to include Angela and her principal Samuel in her rosary prayers, hoping that Mary will give her guidance in how to handle them. And Mary begins to help her develop greater empathy for Angela and Samuel by sending Angela's professor to be an ambassador of peace. Right. Because not all the time is it, you that ends up providing the big solution, the big breakthrough. Usually you get it from somebody else. And then it's up to you to implement it. Here we go. Connie joins a rosary confraternity, besieged by problems. Yeah. Besieged, problems at work, the increasing threats of nuclear war. Connie joins a rosary confraternity in order to join her rosary prayers to those of other believers. And Mary unites those prayers, lifts them to Christ, multiplying graces each person receives who joins her in prayer. Now, having done that, let's get to the final act here. All right. Rapid breakthroughs are because of the multiplied power of the prayers. Create breakthroughs and restore peace between the Eastern Orthodoxy and Roman Catholic churches, as well as between Russia and NATO, and bring support to both Lucy and Connie in resolving their conflicts. And that's how Mary's story will go. All right, so we've done that. And now it is time for the negative shapeshifter, her sister. and that is Teresa Tess. Well, we'll say that she doesn't have her last name. We'll change that because it Gibson. Because, which means that Lucy's last name also changes. Lucy Gibson. And the reason I say that is because Tess is married. So age is 49. She is education. Let's say she's an accountant. So she's got an MS in finance. Ooh, let's do something interesting. Let's see. What degrees? Bachelor's degree in accounting, forensic accounting. I like that. I like that idea. MS in forensic accounting. She is, let's see, what occupations? Let's see what we usually do with forensic. She's a risk management consultant. Yeah. And it's made her somewhat cynical. But she sees all the stealing that people do and all the way they hide their money. And she's just kind of burned out and really not happy in her life. And owns her home. She's got brown hair like her sister, but her eyes are green. And she's got height 5 feet 4 inches. So she's yeah, she's taller than Connie. Weight, she's a little bit overweight, so she's 185 pounds. You know, it's kind of the office work has not done her any favors. And plus depression, you know, it kind of shows up sometimes as extra weight. So stress, high stress tends to show up as extra weight. Let's see, how much do risk analysts consultants make? Yeah, she's making some good money there. She's making about 150K a year. And so she's doing all right financially, but mentally not so much. Her deepest desire. I think she's always wanted esteem. She wants people's respect. Her greatest fear, to be insignificant. And in a sense, this desire to be esteemed, to be, yeah, she wants to feel like she's good enough. And that tells me a lot about her. And her greatest fear is that she will fail. Yeah, her greatest fear is failure. Like she's gonna lose everything. Her greatest strength, bull-dogged determination. When she gets her mind set on something, there is absolutely nothing that is going to stop Tess. Greatest weakness, tendency to run over other people's feelings. Aware of it, which means that her daughter, who happens to be a very sensitive person, often ends up being the brunt of her mother's lack of tact and diplomacy. Her mom will say things that are careless or thoughtless without even being aware of it, and then wonder why her daughter is so hurt, which is one of the reasons why she and Connie get along so well, is that Connie's that sounding board that she doesn't have to please, like she feels like she has to please her mother. So let's see what happens. Actually, Tess is a very unhappy individual, so she enters the story really, she desires, you know, despite Lucy's objections. Let's see. The next thing is after a tough time, something must have triggered it. Oh, wait, you know, over Christmas break, Tess finds out that her husband has been having an affair with her best friend. Yowza. Hence the reason for the talk of divorce. Fears of losing everything, war with her. Oh, you know what? The affair triggers her feelings. She's not good enough. And her fears that she'll lose everything. Grapples whether or not force is the right thing to do. Communication between Dan and Tess runs a heated confrontation. Makes her aware of her careless treatment of her marriage in her pursuit of worldly things, and causes her to consider whether the marriage can be saved. And Tess. Lucy bags Stan and Tess to attend a worldwide marriage encounter weekend. Wants to pay for it. Touched by her generosity and her determination to help them, the pair agree to go. Now, that doesn't necessarily fix everything for Tess, but it does sort of lay out where things are on the timeline. And really, this is happening in the background. These are things that may not be things that Connie finds out about directly. It'll probably be things Lucy says through their conversation, but that subplot is going on. Now to talk about our positive shapeshifter. Which is Gerald Kramer. Okay, Deacon. Gerald Kramer. His age is, what would he say that he was? Yeah, he's late 40s. So he's about as old as Lucy, or not Lucy, but Connie, just give or take a few. Actually, I need to come down here and change these too. I'm going to change these headings so they line up better with what they're supposed to be. It's a small detail, but it helps me navigate my outline. Age, let's say he's 48. Education, he's actually, he could be anything. Deacons don't necessarily have the same educational requirements as priests. Let's say that he's a former engineer. Bachelor's in engineering. Yeah, he's got a BS in engineering. And an MS in project management. Yeah, that'll be fine. So he knows a lot about getting people to work together cooperatively on systems and in creating things, which makes him an asset. He's an engineer. Well, he's a project manager. Let's see. He is a home here. He's he's got blonde hair and eyes. He's got let's blue, just because it's easier. And height, he's a relatively short man. I mean, average, pretty much. He's a little on the portly side. he loves, his deepest desire is to build something meaningful. To build something meaningful. And he applies kind of that desire to his engineering projects as well as the parish work he does, as well as his family. Like he's always looking for meaning in the work that he does. Oof, yeah. His greatest fear is to be the cause of a system's collapse. So he doesn't want to make a mistake that causes everything that he's built to collapse. He has attention to detail. He's an observer. He notices things. That's one of the things that makes him a great engineer. Biggest weakness. Let's see, what would the most likely greatest weakness be for him? To be a little too tactical. Like he tends to, that's it. He has a great working relationship with people, but he tends to keep them at an emotional distance. So that's his greatest weakness, is that emotional distance. The love that he feels for people doesn't always communicate itself in the way that he behaves or the way that he speaks. And so that's one of his weaknesses that he has to learn to overcome. Okay, so let's put him back in the story. So Gerald agrees to be spiritual director for several women at his parish. One of whom is Lucy, or not Lucy, Connie, but finds it a challenge as they don't always appreciate his advice, no matter how valid it is. Let's see what else happens. So we meet Deacon Gerald. Oof. Okay. Let's go back. So this is Deacon Gerald. Okay. That Connie. Advice. And he reaches out to her. Recommend another session so they can discuss it. We need to discuss her expectations or what she should get from spiritual direction. And he reminds her that it's his job to challenge her in areas where she needs to grow, which isn't always going to be easy or to implement. recommends you join a rosary confraternity to help provide a support group. Agrees to read Connie's book for Father McCade and pass on his recommendations based on his understanding of our content. Okay, so that's a happy ending for her too, right? So Deacon Gerald agrees to read Connie's book for Father McCade and pass on the recommendations based on his understanding of her content. Deacon Gerald recommends to Father McCade that the book be recommended to the bishop for an imprimatur, and Father McCade asks him to write Connie and let her know. So that's some of the positive outcomes that are going to come from this. So now we get to go and expand that synopsis based on these three characters. And we have run 38 minutes of time. We could probably get this done before the hour is over. All right, so we're going to start with so we know that Lucy didn't really want to end up. Okay. Yeah, that's a pain I'm familiar with, actually. write a book on the faith. On New Year's Day, Connie receives a call from Tess, who just found out that her husband Dan has been having an affair with Tess's best friend. Tess asks Father McKay to review her book. Connie is shocked. All right, after returning from Christmas bake? Yeah, Christmas bake. We're going to bake Christmas now. All right. Okay, so that doesn't need to change. Those things aren't going to change these events. Angela proves to be a thorn in her side. Let's go ahead. We're going to add Deacon Gerald reaches out to Connie. Okay, so this is the point where all right, so Deacon Gerald and Connie meet to discuss her expectations for what she should get from spiritual direction. And she's reminded that it's his job to challenge her to grow. All right, so, and this is where Mary comes in. Let's see. There we go. All right, so now we have Deacon Gerald recommends. All right, so, oh, that's how we're going to end the story. So, and that's, and Gerald recommends to Father McCabe that Connie's book recommended for the bishop for an imprimatur. Father McCade asks him to write Connie and let her know. Lucy sends a thank you note to Father McCade and a request for a new meeting to discuss how she can better serve him. Right. That. Lucy bags. And see, by having all of these stories outlined, one of the things that I've done is set myself up for additional books that I can write that are tandem to the initial book. So I could potentially get 9 books, not just one. And thus keep readers fed and happy and let them see the picture from multiple different perspectives, which I find always helpful. So now that we've got this expanded outline, we know where everybody's going to be, what they're going to be doing in the story, how it's going to all come together to help Connie move in her hero's journey from being an ordinary individual with her own problems and challenges to becoming this extraordinary individual who does the work to help reclaim the world for Christ. We are ready to begin the actual work on our story. What we'll be doing in the next one is breaking these individual sentences and statements that are in our expanded synopsis into chapter outlines. All right, I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope I did a better job of keeping you in line with what I was doing and why I was making the moves that I was making. Previous videos, I do recommend that you go and watch them. If you like this channel, please subscribe. If you like the video, please like it. If you think you know a writer who could use it, the information in it, please hit the share button. If you want to leave a comment, maybe you want to give your own characters, your own plot outline, I would love to see that in the comments section. Thank you for watching and have a truly blessed day.